What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another video from Pink Tourmaline. And today we're going to be going through an interesting video I stumbled upon last week from the Next Level Soul podcast. And I just got a couple choice clips from this interview that I think are really fascinating and provide a lot of information, despite the fact that the person that's giving this information is kind of on the new agey vibe, if you will. And you're going to see what I mean by that in a moment. But it doesn't matter because there's still very important information to be gleaned from this interview. And the observations, I think, are important and legitimate. It's the interpretation where I would say, myself and many folks in our community would disagree or differ, I would say, from this woman. It's about the interpretation. So my point is, regardless of a differing viewpoint about the information I think is really important. I want to step through it and talk about it. So I've taken out a couple excerpts, a couple videos. I'm also going to be talking about the idea of duality in this video, because I know a lot of people who talk about life being a school, they talk about it in the context of duality and the importance of duality. Well, why is there bad? So you have the option to make the choice to do good. I remember hearing that too when I was first learning about this whole new age ideology, and it made sense to me at the time. It doesn't really so much anymore. And I want to talk about that as well. I actually got a nice little definition of this concept of duality. If you're out there, people, and you think that I have not given the concept of duality a fair shake, let me know in the comments. But this is something I found. I wanted to chat about it and just think logically, does this concept actually make sense in terms of a satisfactory explanation in terms of the purpose of life and why we're here and why we manifest and whatnot? Okay. So this is about a paramedic who has had numerous experiences regarding the transition process and at death. And I think her observations are really, really fascinating and can give us a lot of information and insight going forward. Now, who is this person? This is Sarah K. Grace, and this is a little excerpt from the interview. It says, in this eye-opening conversation, Sarah K. Grace shows how extraordinary psychic abilities emerged when she was only 7 years old, long before she understood what she was experiencing. Raised in a conservative environment where those gifts were feared rather than embraced, she spent decades hiding who she truly was. Everything changed when she became a paramedic. Standing beside countless people during her final moments, she began to see death differently, not as an ending, but as a sacred transition. These experiences transformed her understanding of consciousness, the soul, intuition, healing, trauma, life purpose, and why we choose the lives we live before birth. Okay, so you're going to see why this has transformed her understanding. What are the things that she saw? And I wonder if there's more to the story. I wonder if there's more things that she's seen or experienced or witnessed. I think she did as well have a near-death experience of her own, but this is really more focused about all of the countless death experiences, maybe as well as near-death experiences that she experienced of other people. So I think she's such a valuable resource, just in terms of, at least if we're looking at these types of experiences, she's not just sharing her own experience. She's sharing countless experiences of other people. I haven't really seen many people that's had these types of experiences all together. I think that that's really fascinating. Okay, so without further ado, let's get into the information. Now, this first clip is not really about the information. It's more, I just have a question on how she speaks here in strong absolutes. It's not just a question about her, but it's about people in general taking the stance of really of having a really firm absolute belief, like you have something to fear, you have absolutely nothing to fear, whatever it may be, whatever the absolute statement is, and wondering maybe if people shouldn't be so absolute in their stance about this is definitely not out there, you're going to be totally safe. And even if you experience a couple hundred of these experiences, we don't know 100%. I don't know, it just rubbed me a little the wrong way. Again, I know she's sharing from her experiences, but just wanted to point this out. Let's listen and then we'll talk about it.
Different for everyone.
Well, yes. So now, first and foremost, please understand the most important thing is there's nothing to fear. Death is absolutely inevitable for all of us. It is just like it's as natural as birth. And none of us know when it's coming. So there's so many people that are so scared to live. They bubble wrap themselves and they do all these things, right? And the fear really cheats them out of their life experience a lot of times. So what I'm here to tell you and remind you is please live your life. We are born to die. There's as many ways to die as there are to live. There's literally nothing to fear. It's like taking off a heavy coat. Sometimes it may hurt, but it's only briefly. And you will always be greeted by something or someone. Okay. So you're never going to die alone, even if you're physically alone, because you will be greeted by a loved one, by a celestial, by
Zen master.
Yeah. Some sort of
Jesus always hangs out. He's the hardest working man. Jesus is the hardest working man in show business. He shows up to all the NDEs.
Right.
You didn't see, so you didn't.
I didn't see Jesus,
you heard,
man.
but you heard.
I heard a voice.
That's
It was
all,
a female voice. Yeah.
That's it. You didn't see it.
But I mean, in plant medicine ceremonies,
we'll get into that.
We'll get into that too.
We'll get into. I'm dying to see what you saw in a plant.
Oh my God!
In a plant ceremony, I'm dying to hear that.
Now, if you look at what she's saying there from the standpoint of you have not, for people who are just afraid of death and they think they're going to disappear, disintegrate, or something along those lines, I get why she's comforting people. Hey, look, you're going to still exist. You're going to still be there. I think it's good advice to say, live your life and go on and do whatever you need to do. But the blanket statement of saying, I guess it's easier for us to say in this community where we've maybe have had a deeper investigation of what are some of these potential pitfalls that we have to worry about, this being a reincarnation trap or a soul trick, as opposed to just a simple happy-go-lucky life is a school and everything is set up for a purpose and everybody's positive and happy. So maybe it's easier for us to be naturally questioning at this point in where we're at in terms of our thinking and thought processes. But yeah, to say that there's just absolutely everything is hunky-dory, it's a bit funny to me. Now, I used to also think that all the craziness on the planet, all the lies, all the deception, there's a lot of it. And people need to really wake up and recognize and realize, even if we live in the US and we have really nice, comfortable lives and live in safe neighborhoods and things like that, there is just so much craziness happening between this underneath the surface, and so much deception, even just out in the open, that we seem to accept this commonplace. I talked about this before in advertising, obviously in politics, obviously in relationships. It's just constant lies and deception. Obviously, I think it comes from up upon high and comes down below, and it gets us all into that mindset. Not saying that's an excuse, but the world is just rife with deception and lies. And so then I find it interesting, and I'm saying this as a person who used to think this way, I find it interesting that everyone just assumes that the lies and deception just can't exist as soon as we leave this realm. It's just all pure love and light and positivity and truth. I remember even Betty Guadagno, who I had on the show, she thought the same thing. Again, this is not a slight against her or anyone. I used to think this exact same thing, partially because I don't want to think that there are lies and deceptions when we exit. I wanted to also believe, because it's a scary thought when you're first confronted with it. It was for me, for sure, that no, the deceptions continue and you still have to be on guard. And I thought that's the point when the madness ends, and that's when you're just, okay, now all the stress is over and you just can be embraced by whatever positivity is out there. You don't want to think that. But I guess my point, coming back to my point, is, doesn't it kind of make sense that there's so many lies and deceptions here? Why wouldn't there also be lies and deception and potentially things to look out for in the astral or after you pass out of your body? So I think it's just, you go back to the Hermetic saying so many times, as above, so below. I think to say there's absolutely nothing to fear is an absolute statement that is effectively impossible to prove, number one. Number two, just what's wrong with just saying, hey, yeah, we're going to continue, we're going to exist, but maybe let's do a little bit of research and let's kind of understand the nature of reality and see what exactly is going on out there because maybe, and it's not about having a fear-based mentality, it's about knowledge, it's about understanding the system that we're in so that we can navigate it accordingly. If you're in a literal jail cell on the planet, don't you want to know that you're in a jail cell? Is that negative thinking to think, hey, like, am I actually enclosed in a prison? Because you want to say, oh, should I just spend my entire life cleaning the prison, working in the kitchen, making friends with everybody? Or if there's an exit at some point, at some place here that everybody talks about, and there's a way to get out and go into the real world that's much more beautiful and nicer, shouldn't my whole time in here be focused on that as opposed to shining up the prison, right? It's just a matter of what is the true nature of reality. And before we can make the best decisions for us, I think we need a full picture of what exactly we are in. What is this enclosure? It's not fear-based. It's just wanting to know the truth. Last thing I'll say too, before we go to the next clip, I remember even Betty saying to me during our interview, well, I don't think there's just like fringe people that say that we're in some sort of a soul trick or soul trap. Every NDE that I've ever studied has been beautiful and positive. So I think there's no evidence or no real good evidence that there's any such thing like what you're describing, like a soul trick or a soul trap. So I didn't say all of this during the interview, but there are a lot of things. There's a lot of things to look at in terms of information and potential evidence that we are in this type of a simulation or a setup that has a nefarious purpose or intent behind it. So some of the things that I've been researching, just if you want to look at other resources, obviously remote viewing teams, both Intuitive Underground. We also have the Farsight Institute that has looked at and seen the system. Brett Stewart, somebody else. We've had other multiple people that are OBE experts that have gone out of body multiple times. Tina and Karen know about the system as well. They are quantum healers and they've worked with so many people that have gone outside of the system and seen it. The reason why you may not the Tibetan Book of the Dead talks about some of the stuff. Obviously, Gnosticism is a huge one. If you haven't investigated Gnosticism, I encourage you to do so. That's at the heart of a lot of these concepts. And so anyways, there are a lot of people talking about this. And the other thing you have to, I think, bear in mind is that if the image that is intended to be projected about the system that we're in is that it's not any sort of a trap or a trick, and it's simply this beautiful, benign, lovely place where we're here to learn lessons, and that's the narrative that is intended to be projected, we're going to hear that most of the time. We're going to have to look and investigate more deeply, more closely to find the pieces of information that support the other narrative, which we think at this moment might be the true narrative. You can see this again mirrored and reflected on our planet. If you look at the majority of media outlets, especially let's say even before we had all this independent media and YouTube and these other sources, before all that, let's go back to the 90s when I was a kid growing up. The vast majority of all the information coming at you through media outlets, primarily through the loudspeakers, that's all coming across is, yeah, the world is good. Like these things behind the scenes politically aren't happening. There's no such thing as ETs. That's a laughable topic. I mean, now look at what's coming out. So if there's a narrative that is wanting to be pushed by the people kind of running the system, you're going to see that the vast majority of time. So just because there's a smaller amount of evidence does not mean that this evidence it should be ignored if it's intentionally being suppressed. I think you guys know this, and I don't. This is a bit redundant for me to say this, but I just wanted to put that out there as food for thought for people who are contemplating this material and still don't know what to make of it in light of this imbalance of, wait a minute, but that one's way more prevalent in the 4,000 NDEs. It's like, well, again, that's the sanitized information that's being passed to us so that we can continue on the message. Okay. Next, we're going to talk about her shared death experiences. We're going to talk about what that is in a moment, but it's basically she's not having a near-death experience herself, but she is experiencing death experiences with people as they're passing on. And this is so interesting because it gives a lot of insight to exactly what happens at the moment of death, not just near-death experiences, which we hear a ton about, people that are alive and stuff like that, but she's seeing people that are actually dying and not coming back. And it jives and it corroborates with the NDEs. They go through kind of the same process. So let's listen to all of it. There's a lot of details in this little excerpt right here. Let's check it out.
Breathing. And what I would notice is it was really beautiful. And sometimes it was fast, sometimes it was slow, sometimes it was more vibrant, but it was always a similar pattern. So the chakras would begin to unfurl, and it looks like ribbons, okay, usually beginning at the root, and it unfurls all the way up through the crown. And so I began to understand, wait a sec, this is the light at the end of the tunnel experience, because I'm watching the person die physically, and then I'm watching what their energy body is doing in terms of releasing it. And so it would very slowly unfurl like a ribbon, and the soul would typically shoot out the crown of the head.
That's important. Now, the reason why I'm pausing is here is because I can't remember which resource where I read this, or maybe I saw it in a video. I can't remember. But one person I remember talking about, there was discussions of the angle of ejection out of the body at the moment of death being important to whether or not, let's say, you could escape, get out of the matrix, get out of the system, escape the white light tunnel and all that stuff. And I remember there was a discussion that basically the goal is to exit out of the top of the head as opposed to come out of the, like, levitate up out of the body. What she's saying is very interesting here, because she's saying most people shoot out of the head in the majority of the cases. She's going to say an exception to that in a moment. But my point is if she's saying most people do come straight out of the top of the head, I just thought that was an important thing, because maybe then that negates that goes against the idea that it's important to exit out this way. And then if you go out that way, you're good to go. Because if most people are exiting out that way anyways, I would imagine that's probably not, I could be wrong here though, it could not, but probably not a key to getting past the various systems and whatnot that try to get us roped back into the reincarnation loop.
Head into the top right corner of the room normally, where they'd be greeted by deceased loved ones or pets or some sort of religious archetype or deity.
Oh, really?
And so it was really
did you see this?
Yeah, I would see it over and over and over again. And so they would come out, and when they would release at the crown of the head, sometimes every once in a while out the chest, but usually out the crown of the head, it's like a water gun, right? And sometimes, like, if people had a lot of spunk and pizzazz and hardiness, there would still be color. And some people were like, I'm over it, man. It was just like a wisp. But regardless, they would reform, and the soul looks like the person embodied, just you can see through it.
Real quick. So she said they'd either have a lot of color or like a little bit of a wisp, basically saying how spunky they were, how energetic they seemed to be. But I wonder if there's another theory here, because something that Brett Stewart talked about when they remote viewed the word moksha, he did mention that every time the soul leaves and it goes through this process where basically energy is extracted out of it, and then he was saying that the soul dims a little bit, which is a really scary thought. I remember when he mentioned it. If it's true, it's true. I don't know. I had a thought or a wonder that, is it based on, I know this is, again, her interpretation. It's the spunkiness, or it's the how bright their light was, or whatever she is interpreting it as. But could it also be that perhaps the souls that burst out with more color and energy are souls that are newer into the reincarnation loop, so they're still more vibrant. They haven't been harvested for energy as many times, whereas these souls that just kind of poof out, that slip out almost without a big explosion of color and light, maybe they've gone through many more times and they're a bit more dim. Don't know. Again, this is an interpretation question. I have no idea, but I thought it was interesting. It just made me think of that Brett Stewart statement.
And I would get to watch this little family reunion right up in the corner.
So you're doing shared death experiences, essentially.
That's a thing?
That's a thing, yeah. So there's a near-death experience and there's a shared death experience. And I've had many people on who've had in the medical field.
Oh,
I've
yeah.
had hospice nurses.
Oh, yeah. That's what we do, man.
They sit there and they actually experience the near-death. But you're viewing it. They actually are out of their body for a second, and they're kind of like seeing it from the astral.
It's really interesting that she's seen this so many times, as opposed to one person experiencing it one time and it being a dream, right? It's really, really interesting. And I'm trying to, I wonder, I mean, it's funny, this just goes back to the idea of NDEs or what happens at the moment of death. I'm trying to think of a good reason, because I have our reason, obviously, which to me makes the most sense. But what's a good reason why some people have family members, some people have Jesus, some people have this or that or the other? Why do you need potentially different entities for each individual person? Obviously, the justification that's been given is whatever makes you comfortable. If you believed in Jesus, you're going to see Jesus. If you did not, then you'll see family members. And my rebuttal to that is, at that moment, it shouldn't be about comfort. I just want to know truth. And shouldn't we be able to feel the truth? Like if they're saying there's no deception out there, why do we need why do we need somebody to come ease us into it? It's just like, give it to us. We can feel authenticity. We can feel truth. Just give us the truth. Whoever's coming down to say, hey, all right, this is time. Come with us. We're going to bring you up this way. Why is it always have to be one of and it's not always the same. It's different based on somebody's life experience. So obviously what we think at this current moment is that's more likely to be a manipulation intentionally in this artificial system to love bomb you, to keep you roped in, to keep you pliable so that you can come in, get convinced to do a life review and so on and so forth. But anyways, it just doesn't really make sense to me if you're looking at this from the angle of, no, there's no manipulation, there's nothing to fear. Then why wouldn't it just be, boom, you're here? No, we're just going to give you the straight truth. You have passed on, you're ready for the next level, or you're ready for the next cycle. Come with me. We're going to show you everything, and you can feel and understand that truth, right? So there's no need for any transitory process or family reunion or anything like that. Okay, anyways, that's just an aside. But the information that she relayed, I think, is really important. Next, now those were typical, more like death experiences in a hospice situation or whatever. Now she talks about the difference between those and what she's noticed with traumatic death experiences. So I thought this was really interesting. When somebody dies, all of a sudden they get hit by a car or something, they don't expect it. There's a different type of death experience that they have. Here they get these celestial entities that show up. I'm trying to hypothesize why it would be different based on the type of experience that you have. I guess maybe you're in a different mindset or a different mind frame when you're not anticipating it. Therefore, there's a different protocol. But why these celestial beings explicitly or specifically, I don't know. But anyways, listen to what she has to say about this. Very interesting.
It's a frequency, you guys.
Sure.
All of this is just frequency. It's all just energy. Okay. There's a consciousness associated with celestials, and it just is the most nurturing, calming, loving, amazing energy ever. Usually 8 to 12 feet tall. The big ones are 12 feet, but usually around 8 to 12 feet. Cobalt blue. Very, very gentle, very compassionate. If there was features, which I often didn't see, it was very androgynous, very beautiful. But they never say anything. They're just there to like just coated the entire chaotic scene of crazy with this really beautiful calm. And then the person who had just died would be like, what is this? Right. And I would watch them. It was sometimes, well, yeah. Sometimes,
moth to a flame almost.
yeah, it was just very, very gentle. There was kind of this understanding. It was not like they came and,
Snatched them.
No, there's no snatching. You're not going to be snatched by anything, especially anything dark. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
We'll talk about that too. But it was this gentle coming to understanding, gentle, like, okay, wait a second. I guess I just died. And then they would turn and they would embrace and disappear.
Okay. So again, not snatching. And I get that. That probably is because I would imagine it's again, it's getting the free will buy-in. So you're coming, you're bathing. It sounded to me like a love bomb of sorts where you're bathing in this kind, warm energy, and you feel like Betty Guadagno talked about the feeling of all these orgasms, like 1 trillion orgasms at once. She didn't say exactly that, and she's not experiencing it. She's just observing it, but the way she describes it from the third person, maybe it could be that type of thing. And then they're taken away. So again, it's this positive feeling where you're bathed in something, you're pliable, and then you're taken to the next level, you're taken into the white light, whatever it may be. Super, super interesting. Again, why 2 different protocols? I mean, there are 2 different types of death. Maybe you're in 2 different states of mind, depending on how you go. If you're anticipating and you're thinking about it, maybe you're like, okay, I'm expecting to see Jesus because I've been Christian, or I'm expecting to see my family. Oh my God, because I'm going to the next level. So they provide you with that. Whereas here, those expectations aren't there because it happens in a snap. And so they send these beings down there just maybe to give you this love bomb and feel coddled and taken care of, and it works better in those instances. Just the idea. I don't know. I'd love to know more. I'd love to know if people have a specific explanation for the difference, but super cool nevertheless. Okay, moving on. Now, she mentioned the dark figures. Here she says, don't fear the dark figures. Don't fear the dark figures that you see in the movie Ghost, where they come and they grab you. That's not a thing. She's never, ever seen that. Okay, let's check it out in her own words.
So it's so you mentioned something about dark. I know that's a lot of fear a lot of people have of like, going back to Ghost, the dark spirits that came and pulled the bad guy down.
That scared the crap out of me when I was a kid.
Oh my God, can you imagine?
Right?
But that's the one place they got wrong, because I've never heard in all of my experiences and all of my conversations it doesn't happen. It's not a thing. You're not going to dark angels not coming. I've heard of hellish near-death experiences, which are self-induced
subconscious
until you, because of the program you had. And then you always have a way out. And generally all of them, Jesus shows up, an angel shows up, someone shows up as soon as they ask for it. So I'm glad, I want you to clear that fear for people because of all the dogma and all the crap that we're thrown on, that you're like, if you did this, the dark angel's coming or death is coming for you. Or
no.
Like
I saw hundreds of deaths and hundreds of dead bodies and
some probably not the most kind souls.
No.
Some of them might have been in the darker, doing dark stuff.
Yeah, I mean that's part of the human paradigm, right? There's parts for all of it. Right. But I never one time saw a dark entity come snatch a soul away, ever.
Right.
Okay, so there's nothing to fear in that. And
the only thing I wanted to say in regards to this idea is, I think what we would say is, they're not going to come that way. It doesn't necessarily mean the intent is not nefarious, and the intent is not to keep you wrapped into this manipulation and into the cycle. They can still come in this, right? Why wouldn't they come to you this way if they're trying to keep you entrapped and ensnared? It's kind of like what we see on this planet right now, where we're being sold certain products that are terrible for us, that are horrible for us. We can talk about the food industry. We can talk about pharmaceuticals. We can talk about all things. They don't come to us and be like, hey, this is going to mess you up and we're going to scare you. It's like, no, it comes with this amazing coding, this great branding, these like ridiculous commercials that are just nonsensical. And so it's presented in this beautiful packaging, yet what it's doing to you and to your body and keeping you wrapped in this addiction, that's all quite bad. So we could see that, it doesn't have to explicitly look like a dark entity or a negative entity. It doesn't have to look like that just to be that, if that makes sense. I was wondering though, I was thinking about this, and I was like, well, you know what though? If that could be, or maybe it was at one time, who knows, the part of the matrix. If the idea is just different types of manipulation, why does it seem that it's always trying to manipulate us with positivity and love and this type of artificial light, as opposed to a fear-based system of coming in, right? You could imagine a system being set up as like, hey, let's like scare these people into constantly reincarnating. We come down when they pass on. We freak them out. We tell them your only way to get out of this is you've got to go back in. I was just thinking about this earlier. I wonder if because it could also theoretically go like that. So why isn't it like that? And the only thing I could come up with or think of was, well, that would potentially circumvent this idea of free will. If you're being scared into something, it's just like in contract law, if you sign a contract under duress, it's sort of null and void. So I wonder if perhaps it has to do with the law of free will and getting people to sign on the dotted line of their own volition to some extent, where obviously you're still doing it through manipulation and deception, but they're still willingly signing on, as opposed to, oh my God, I'm going to sign because I'm so scared. Maybe that has less of a buy-in and therefore isn't as powerful for these entities, or doesn't keep us as locked into the system. Just a theory. All right, I think this is the last clip here that I have, and then we're going to talk about duality. And she just made a statement here, and I just wonder why so confident that, hey, look, don't worry about it. Good, bad, you're positive, negative. People want to be positive all the time, but don't worry. The negative is here for a reason. Everything in this life serves a purpose. For us, for somebody else, like, how do we know so certainly? How are we so confident that everything is serving a good, positive, benevolent, like a purpose that is evolving us in a positive direction? How do we really know that?
And everything serves a purpose. So we have to understand, a lot of times what I see in the spiritual community is kind of a light chasing, or like the good vibes only want to feel good kind of thing. And it's a misunderstanding oftentimes of the nature of duality. There's nothing to fear in darkness, because if we didn't have darkness, we couldn't have light. We have to have the equal opposite.
Correct.
And my personal lived experience is, the more willing I've been to go into and own my own darkness, my own shadow, my own fear, my own behaviors and characteristics, my own trauma, that gives me the access to the equal opposite amount of light. So people are wanting this like high vibe experience and trying to like come up out of the body through all of these different practices, which it's amazing. There's a lot of great ways out there. And there's nothing to fear in darkness. It's part of the human paradigm. The more we understand it, the more that we own our side of it, our part in it, then what happens is we are given access to both.
We have to have the opposites. I think she said something along those lines. We have to have the duality. That is an assumption. Why do we have to have it? And we're going to talk about duality in a moment from some little excerpts that I've gathered from ChatGPT. But why the assumption that, yes, look, obviously, if we didn't have the negative, we couldn't understand and know what positive is. Maybe, maybe not. If you listen to some of the pre-birth memories, that's also another great resource and information source. If you listen to some of the pre-birth memories that I've covered on this channel, some people remember being in a pleroma type area where there wasn't any duality, there wasn't any nefariousness, and there was no negativity, no evil. That was only brought in. That was only a part of coming into this incarnation and into this realm when they were. In the way that they described it, what it sounded like to me is almost manipulated or coerced in some way to come into the system, and then they stayed stuck in here for still being in here. So why do we go back? We talk about duality and we just slide it in there as a given. There has to be duality, because if not, without the dark, we wouldn't know light. Without the bad, we wouldn't know the good. How do we know that? Could that be a false assumption? So let's talk about this idea of duality as we close out, because I've heard a lot of people talk about this in the New Age, in that New Age community. So what is it? So duality is contrast. This is the simplest interpretation. Opposites help define one another. You might conceptually know what happiness is. You might conceptually know what happiness is without suffering, but after a painful period, happiness may feel more vivid and precious. Loss can make someone appreciate relationships. Illness can make ordinary health seem miraculous. In this view, pain does not necessarily create goodness. It makes goodness easier to recognize. So, and it's interesting that it says pain does not create goodness. I think that's part of the argument of this idea of we need duality, because how would we know goodness without pain? But it's saying right here, it doesn't create goodness. It says it makes goodness easier to recognize. And then so somebody might say, well, therefore, this is exactly why we're here. So we can recognize it more easily. And this is how we learn and grow. Maybe, or maybe that's not true, and we don't need that at all. And we already have this knowledge and information. We only think we need to learn these things because of the memory wipe and because our experiences have been cut off from us and they're inaccessible to us. And another alternative explanation as well, will kind of it connects with that one, is going back to the idea of transurfing reality, the pendulums, the swings. And it's the swings of duality that generate the most energy, the most loosh, right? From high thresholds of happiness to low thresholds of pain. Both are generating loosh, but maybe on opposite spectrums for different purposes, etc. That to me seems like a more apt rationale for having this type of duality throughout the planet, throughout this realm, is because that's how we're getting movement and we're getting this energy generation. Okay, next, duality is a setting for growth and choice. Many spiritual traditions teach that life provides contrasting possibilities. So that qualifies such as courage, compassion, forgiveness can become active choices. So like courage arises in the presence of fear. Forgiveness becomes possible after injury. Generosity matters where selfishness or scarcity exists. Integrity matters because dishonesty is possible. This is, again, hey, we got to have the bad to make the good choice. But that's an assumption. Is that the case? Maybe this is not how things work whatsoever in the pleroma or these outer realms. Or also maybe it's a matter of degree as well. We think we have to have these great extreme negatives to have these equal and opposite positives. Maybe it's not that way. Maybe you can still have some sort of learning or growth, but the entire spectrum of whatever we call negative to positive is completely shifted up. So the lowest end of whatever that duality would be is still amazing to us. I mean, again, these are just theories, but my point is, I think when people rest on this assumption of duality as the end all be all explanation for why things are the way they are in support of this idea of growth and Earth being a school, I think it's really short-sighted. And it's just an assumption that people lay down quickly and they just blast right past it. So I'm not even convinced that we need any sort of duality. And again, I'm not convinced that we need any sort of growth or education in terms of our soul, especially when our memories are being wiped after each and every life. So anyways, that's where we shall end on this video. Very, very interesting stuff. Once again, shout out to Sarah K. Grace. I think that she's got really fascinating stories and really fascinating experiences that regardless of where we sit in terms of our interpretation of the information nevertheless, I think is very valuable and very important. And I'd love to get more conversations happening from people that have these abilities that can either attach to souls as they exit the body or have these experiences over and over and over and see what they can learn, especially when people have a really discerning eye. I'd be really curious to see what they're seeing in these experiences. If you are one of these people, hit me up, reach out to me. I'd love to chat with you and learn more. Also, make sure to check out our Discord community. It is growing like crazy. We've got a lot of cool conversations happening in the Discord. So make sure to join us, totally free, in the description below. Thank you guys so much for joining. We'll see you in the next video. Take it easy.